So how important is cognition when it comes to supporting kids? Hi, my name is Aubrey Page and I'm the CEO of the Change Starts Here Collaborative, and cognition is kind of an arbitrary number that we base a lot of services on, and it has an interesting history. So IQ tests or cognition tests were created around the 1900s, the turn of the century, and they were created basically as part of the eugenics movement. So we are going to test people's intelligence and find a number associated with that so that we can decide who should be sterilized and not be allowed to have more kids and who should not. This is obviously a huge form of ableism and not okay. And as time has gone on, it is very clear that the IQ test benefits certain people. Certain people are more likely to score higher based on their cultural background, language background, and so therefore it is biased. However, that doesn't mean that our society hasn't kind of built itself upon how we use those numbers. And when you're talking to scientists, a lot of times they'll say, it's kind of negligible. The numbers from one number to the next, it just kind of, it doesn't matter that much. So the way that we got to an IQ, an intellectual disability, is 70, and the way we got there is that because one standard deviation below the mean, or 15 points below 100, is 85, and 15 points below 85 is 70. So 2 standard deviations below the mean is 70, and we've decided if you have an intellectual disability, then you're qualified for many services. And there are areas in which we only qualify people based on IQ and not based on developmental disability. Of course, as our awareness of what developmental disabilities entail and what the brain does expands, I'm hoping that we see that differently. But there are many people who have very high IQs who still need support. And I feel like when it comes to autism, we can see this narrative. We can see someone who can solve really complex math equations, but also needs help tying their shoe. Like, these are 2 different skills, and we can see that with our mind. But when we have a kid who's going up for an IEP meeting and they said, well, we did the IQ test and their IQ's in the 90s, I don't see what the problem is, all bets are off, right? We're relying on that one number. That one number doesn't take into account a few other things like executive functioning, which is our brain's ability to organize a whole bunch of information and execute those tasks, or adaptive functioning, which is our life skills and what we're able to do independently. And so if we don't have that documented and taken into account, then we're going to still be missing things. And then what ends up happening is they say, well, the IQ is fine. And so their reluctance to do work or their behaviors in school are just that, behaviors. We just need behavior modification. But what we have to do is dig deeper and find out what other ways the brain needs additional support in order to help these kids. And if we rely purely on cognition, we're going to be missing a lot. So for example, in 1996, Streiskuth did a study on individuals who were diagnosed with FASD in Washington State, and 84% of them had IQs higher than 70. And so when we say FASD, people assume comorbid intellectual disabilities, and it's by and large not the case. And so if we continue to rely on the qualification of intellectual disability for children who really need it, we will miss the vast majority of children who need support. And if we miss the ability to support them, then we are going to be paying for it, literally paying for it later, because those individuals will struggle in other areas of their life. So how do we institute the structure and support needed early based on what their needs are, and not base it on a really meaningless number like IQ?